The spirits of Hotel Monte Vista. The neon sign of the Hotel Monte Vista flickered against the dark Arizona sky, casting an eerie glow onto the brick-lined streets of Flagstaff. Built in 1927, the hotel was an icon of Old West charm, but its reputation stretched beyond its history. Locals called it a haven for the restless dead. Emma Carter checked in on a crisp October evening, looking for a quiet weekend escape. A journalist from Phoenix, she had heard whispers of the hauntings and hoped to uncover a story. The desk clerk, an older man with tired eyes, handed her the key to room 305 without a word of warning, but his uneasy glance lingered as she walked away. The hotel's vintage interior was both charming and unsettling. The antique elevator groaned as it carried her to the third floor, and the hallway was unnaturally quiet, save for the faint hum of distant music from the 1920s. Emma's room was small but cozy, with a 4-poster bed and a window that overlooked the glowing downtown streets. She unpacked her notebook and recorder, determined to catch any hint of the supernatural. As night fell, the hotel seemed to come alive. At first, it was subtle, a creak of the floorboards in the hallway, the faint sound of laughter when no one was around. Emma brushed it off as her imagination. By midnight, she was dozing on the bed, her notebook filled with ideas, when a sudden knock jolted her awake. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. There was no response. Emma hesitated, then opened the door to find an empty hallway. She leaned out, her heart pounding, but no one was there. As she closed the door, she noticed the air in her room felt colder, and the faint scent of cigars lingered. She remembered the story of room 305, the tale of a phantom gambler who was said to haunt the space. He had died in the room decades ago. Some claimed from a heart attack, others whispered foul play. Guests often reported the scent of cigars and the feeling of being watched. Determined to stay awake, Emma set up her recorder on the nightstand and began asking questions into the empty room. "Is someone here with me? What's your name?" she asked. The room remained silent, but the recorder began to pick up faint static. The sound grew louder, morphing into what sounded like a man's voice muttering, "Get out." Emma froze, staring at the recorder as the static cut off abruptly. Before she could process what had happened, a loud crash came from the closet. She leapt from the bed, grabbing her flashlight, and cautiously opened the door. Nothing was inside but her coat and suitcase, both undisturbed. The night wore on, and the activity only escalated. The radio turned on by itself, playing scratchy swing music that faded into silence before she could turn it off. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, and at one point, she felt an icy hand brush against her shoulder. By dawn, Emma was exhausted but exhilarated. She reviewed her recordings, hearing faint whispers and footsteps she hadn't noticed before. One phrase stood out, a gruff voice that repeated, "This is my room." She checked out that morning, her curiosity satisfied, but as she handed over her key, the desk clerk gave her a knowing smile. "Room 305, he said. "Not everyone makes it through the night." Emma left Hotel Monte Vista with a story, but she couldn't shake the feeling she had brought something with her. Even months later, in the quiet of her own home, she occasionally caught the faint scent of cigars and heard the faint hum of old music drifting through the air. The Phantom Bellboy. The Hotel Monte Vista in Flagstaff, Arizona, was a place steeped in stories. Over its long history, it had been a speakeasy, a meeting place for travelers, and according to many, a gathering spot for the dead. Cynthia Palmer didn't believe in ghosts. She was a traveling nurse, staying at the hotel for a quick stop on her way to California. It was cheaper than the chain hotels along the highway, and its historic charm was a nice bonus. The front desk clerk gave her room 210, a room with a perfect view of downtown Flagstaff. He didn't mention the hotel's haunted reputation. The room was quaint, with a vintage radio on the dresser and a gold-framed mirror that seemed to catch light in peculiar ways. Cynthia dropped her bag on the bed and kicked off her shoes. It had been a long drive, and all she wanted was a hot shower and a good night's sleep. As the water poured over her, she thought she heard a faint knock on the door. She turned off the water and listened. Nothing. She dried off, slipped into pajamas, and crawled into bed. She was halfway asleep when the knock came again, 3 sharp raps, louder this time. Annoyed, she got up and opened the door, expecting a staff member or another guest. The hallway was empty, silent, except for the faint hum of the ancient elevator at the far end. "Probably just some kids messing around," she muttered, closing the door. She had barely settled back into bed when she heard it again. Not a knock this time, but the sound of her door handle jiggling. Cynthia's pulse quickened. She sat up, staring at the door, and called out, "Who's there?" No answer. The handle stopped moving. She told herself it was nothing and tried to sleep, but her nerves were frayed. At some point during the night, she woke again to the sound of soft footsteps in her room. She bolted upright, her heart pounding. In the faint glow of the streetlight filtering through the curtains, she saw a figure standing near the door, a young man in a crisp bellboy uniform. "What the—" Cynthia started, but the words caught in her throat. The man smiled politely. "Can I get you anything, ma'am?" Cynthia blinked, frozen in place. "What? Who are you? How did you get in here?" The bellboy tilted his head. "I'm here to help," he said simply. His voice was calm, almost reassuring, but his presence filled the room with an unnatural chill. Before she could say anything else, the figure turned and walked toward the door. She scrambled out of bed, flipping on the light, but the room was empty. The door was still locked from the inside. The next morning, Cynthia went to the front desk, pale and shaken. "Does your staff normally come into guests' rooms at night?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The desk clerk raised an eyebrow. "No, ma'am." "Why?" Cynthia hesitated, unsure if she should share what she saw. Finally, she said, I saw someone, a bellboy." The clerk's expression darkened. "Ah, room 210, he said softly. "You've met our phantom bellboy." Apparently, the ghost of a young bellhop had been spotted numerous times over the decades, always polite and eager to serve. Guests often reported him appearing out of nowhere, asking if they needed help, then vanishing into thin air. "I don't believe in ghosts," Cynthia said, her voice shaky. The clerk chuckled. "You wouldn't be the first to say that, until they meet him." Cynthia left the Hotel Monte Vista that day, but the memory of the phantom bellboy stayed with her. She would tell herself it had been a dream, a trick of her overtired mind. But every now and then, she'd catch a whiff of cigarette smoke, something the bellboy was also known for, and wonder if the polite young man was still trying to help, even in death. The Lady in Red. The Hotel Monte Vista had always carried an air of mystery, and in the dim glow of its vintage chandeliers, time seemed to stand still. Guests whispered about ghostly bellboys, phantom gamblers, and disembodied voices. But the story of the Lady in Red was one that sent shivers through even the most skeptical. Evelyn Harper didn't care for ghost stories. She was an artist passing through Flagstaff on her way to showcase her work in Los Angeles. The hotel's charm intrigued her, so she booked room 306. She loved the idea of staying somewhere steeped in history. What she didn't know was that room 306 had its own grim legacy. Decades ago, the Lady in Red was said to have been a guest at the hotel. A stunning woman with fiery hair and a wardrobe to match, she was rumored to be a working girl who catered to the hotel's high-profile visitors. Her life ended tragically when, one fateful night, she was attacked and murdered in room 306. Some said it was a jealous lover. Others claimed it was a robbery gone wrong. Whatever the truth, the Lady in Red never truly left. Evelyn arrived late in the evening, her arms full of art supplies. She admired the room's vintage furnishings, the heavy velvet drapes, and the clawfoot tub in the bathroom. It felt like stepping into another era, and she appreciated the creative inspiration the place offered. Exhausted, she unpacked a few items, set up her sketch pad on the desk, and decided to take a quick nap before starting her work. She had barely closed her eyes when she felt a strange sensation, like someone was watching her. Jolted awake, she glanced around the room. The light from the hallway slipped under the door, and everything else was still. Shaking it off as travel fatigue, she went back to sleep. Around midnight, Evelyn woke again, this time to the sound of soft footsteps. They weren't coming from the hallway, they were inside her room. Her breath caught in her throat as she sat up, scanning the darkness. She flicked on the bedside lamp, and the room fell silent. Nothing seemed out of place, but her heart raced. She decided to distract herself by sketching. Sitting at the desk, she began to draw the room's antique furniture, letting her pencil glide across the paper. As she worked, a faint floral perfume wafted through the air. It was subtle but unmistakable, and Evelyn didn't recall smelling it before. She looked around, confused. The scent grew stronger, and suddenly she felt a chill sweep over her, as though someone had walked past her. That's when she saw her. In the mirror above the desk, a figure stood behind her. A tall woman in a flowing red gown, her hair a cascade of fiery curls. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow and unblinking. Evelyn spun around, but the room was empty. The scent of perfume lingered. Terrified but unable to look away, Evelyn turned back to the mirror. The lady in red was still there, her gaze fixed on Evelyn's reflection. She lifted a hand as though reaching out, and Evelyn felt an icy pressure on her shoulder. The room seemed to hum with energy, the air thick and suffocating. "I didn't mean to intrude," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. "I'll leave." The lady in red tilted her head, her expression unreadable, before vanishing into thin air. The room fell silent again, the chill dissipating, but Evelyn didn't stay to see if she would return. She packed her belongings in a frenzy and checked out before sunrise, leaving behind her sketchpad in her haste. Weeks later, Evelyn received a call from the hotel. They had found her sketchpad and wanted to return it. When she opened the package, her heart sank. Among her sketches of the room was a drawing she didn't remember making, a detailed portrait of the lady in red, her eyes piercing, her gown flowing as though caught in an unseen breeze. To this day, Evelyn avoids historic hotels, but the lady in red remains etched in her memory and in her art. If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. It will encourage us to work more harder and bring you more true chilling stories and facts from across the world. Thank you.